Welcome to the Pacesetter Pod, where we explore and reveal the perspectives, insights, and approaches to deliver great results and growth in your agribusiness through better execution. Here's your host, the Integration Pacesetter, Joe Mosier.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Pacesetter Pod. As always, I'm your host, Joe Mosier, and I appreciate you choosing to spend your time with us today. Now, I'm going to ask you a question that we've all heard many times. What are you optimizing for? The question, what are you optimizing for, is one of those really powerful inquiries that can do one of two things. It can either expose a weakness in a business, a management team, or thinking that helps get the business back on track when it gets distracted, goes off into the tall grass, fails to focus on what they're actually trying to accomplish. And conversely, it can also ignite the business and act as an accelerant to put really great things in motion. The question, what are you optimizing for, is on par with other really important questions like, what problem are we trying to solve? Right? Like, that's a question that just cuts through the noise to get to the heart of the matter. Or does this solution or service or idea or product, whatever it is, does this solve a problem for the market? Another really important question. Or finally, is this a solution or a product or service that people will pay for? Absolutely critical if you're running a for-profit enterprise. And so I love the question, what are you optimizing for? And it really suits the businesses that we work with very well. I'm talking about established agribusinesses, known brands, by a specific leg of the value chain. They have a track record of performance. And it's well suited to those established businesses that are looking to improve operations. They're looking to find efficiencies in their operations and their performance. That are trying to differentiate on quality, let's say, or features or reliability, whatever it might be. When you're optimizing, it means that the machine has been built. And now you're looking to drive more performance through it. But for these businesses, it's also important to know that the optimization question is not the only one to be thinking about. And that's what we're going to discuss today. I want to talk to you about why optimization is such a great concept to dig into in your business. I want to talk about what a focus on optimization can actually miss, though, and why it's important to pan back. And then I want to share a personal story of how this has shown up in my business. So with that, let's jump in. First, what are we optimizing for such a good question? Right? I think we all intuitively feel like it's an important question, but why is that? It's pretty simple. In my mind, it does three things for management employees. The first is it produces clarity. If you can define in a very simple way what it is you're optimizing your business for, then that simplicity becomes transferable as the message ripples out throughout your organization. That clarity creates the conditions for consistency of understanding. And then second, once you have that consistency of understanding, that creates the conditions where you can improve alignment. I'm talking about alignment among priorities, alignment among resource allocation, hopefully alignment among incentives. And as we all know, when you have misalignment in your agribusiness, it creates friction, and that's rarely productive. And misalignment will result in all sorts of negative outcomes, things like working at cross purposes. It'll manifest as resources that are being squandered on suboptimal projects, people's individual sort of priorities. And it'll create general confusion and frustration among your employees that's going to eventually find its way back to your customers. And that damage will ripple out beyond the four walls of your business. And so on the back of the clarity that it creates, meaning the question, what are we optimizing for? It creates the clarity, which then begets the alignment. Now you finally get the focus that you need. And I won't belabor the topic of focus, as we've covered it many times in this podcast. But suffice to say that in this opportunity-rich and resource-constrained environment in which most agribusiness operates today, focus is perhaps the greatest unlock of performance that is available to you. So again, why is the question, what are we optimizing for, so important? It creates the clarity, alignment, and focus that you need. And when that clarity, alignment, and focus is applied to your agribusiness, that creates movement and progress. That's why we're asking, what are we optimizing for? And that's why I think it's so important. But what does this question miss? What are you optimizing for is reflective of your strategy, no doubt. It should help you get centered back in your strategy. It should keep you anchored to your objectives. and ultimately should keep you rooted in your game plan. But as such, it's inherently an act of offense rather than defense, because it's about trying to make things happen. What I see time and again is optimization discussions that are centered around maybe scaling a product or service, about improving put-through capabilities within a facility, about improving quality, maybe increasing order fulfillment accuracy, capturing more volume at the farm gate. You get the idea. These are all good things. And the optimization question is important because then to know what your plan is and what plays you're calling helps you get to your goal. But offense is only half the game. And there's an old adage that defense wins championships. Offense can get you far, but you're not going to win the World Series with just great batting if you have a lousy bullpen, to use a Major League Baseball example. So in addition to the optimization lens, you need to think too in terms of threats or blind sides. So what do I mean by threats or blind sides? This is things like, what might we be doing or not doing that could hurt us? What might our competitors do? And how could that upset both our existing business and those novel things that we're looking to create and work on? What other negative externalities like interest rates or trade policy, infrastructure failures, freight availability, weather, plantings, yield, etc., what could all these do to our plans? Everyone, again, should be asking, what are we optimizing for? But you also need to be asking, what are we working to protect or prevent? It's about both offense and defense. And if you're only thinking about optimization, if you're only thinking about doing more of what you want at a bigger, better, faster scale, you can get outflanked. You can miss things. And so it's important to also say, what are we working to protect? What are we working to prevent?
Poorly executed mergers and acquisitions destroy more value than they create. They can set your company back years. To defend your firm's position in the marketplace, you need access to the leading practices that unlock the greater potential of your people, processes, and systems. If you are undertaking a company transformation or pursuing an acquisition as a vehicle to grow, set up a call with Joe by visiting www.moshercg.com.
And so let me try to frame this in a personal story, and I want to talk to you about it and how it shows up in sort of the short, young, and evolving history of Mosher Consulting Group. I conceived of my advisory business a number of years back. It was in very general terms. And then as time went on, that idea was refined. That refinement eventually came from blurry into focus. And then eventually the business came into existence in late 2020. And at that time, there was not much that I could really optimize for, given that I was just getting off the ground. In those early days of starting a business, it feels like the whole game is about playing offense. Right? You're focused on marketing. Who am I trying to speak to? What do I want them to know and believe and understand about us and what we do? About business development, right? Getting in front of buyers, understanding their needs, understanding fit, trying to move forward in those conversations. You might be developing some intellectual property if you're in an advisory business, right? The tools, the processes, the methodologies that you're going to apply to deliver the value that you're talking about. You have to ultimately win business, right? You have to get signed contracts. You have to get people to say, yes, I believe you can help me. And yes, I'll pay you for the privilege. And then finally, you have to do really good work. After all, as a management consultant or in a management consulting business, if you don't demonstrate your ability to solve valuable problems for your clients, you don't really have much of a business. But as you know, that, as I said before, the game is not only offense. And so beyond getting things in motion, and again, this is not really an optimization effort as much as a startup effort, but beyond those getting things in motion, there were some underlying assumptions that needed to be tested or validated, some hypotheses that need to be put under stress. Because these things, if I didn't really focus on them, could also present real threats to the business. And so what do I mean by that? Examples would be, is this truly a need at scale? The work that I'm doing, is this need exists beyond a couple of clients that I've just been, fortunate to stumble in front of? And how do I validate that it's a need at scale? If this is a need, do other solutions already exist? Am I entering a commoditized space? How do I determine who else is doing this? And how do I know if I'm stepping into, that wide open blue ocean space where you're on the vanguard, or are you stumbling into a really competitively dense market where differentiation is going to be very difficult? Ultimately, do I offer something people are going to pay for? It's great to identify a widely distributed opportunity or pain in the marketplace. And it's really encouraging to see that few other people are addressing it. But just because it's a need and no one else is doing it, that can tell you two things. It can either tell you, one, go forth, get after it, or it could perhaps suggest that there's something else underlying it. You need to ensure that that unmet need with no one working on it translates to sales and that the solutions you offer can be monetized. A widely held opportunity with no competition is not universally a good sign. And so as I look back at those initial threats or perhaps risk exposures that we needed to look at and validate and keep an eye on, beyond just winning a couple of contracts, beyond just establishing a market spot, beyond establishing some sort of a brand, we needed to be focused on these potential risks and threats and things we wanted to work to prevent or protect against. Now, I'm very happy to say that things have gone well and the business has not just survived those early days, but has thrived over the last 4 years we've been at it. And we've had great success and enjoyment serving ag supply and value chain clients. And so now the question of what are we optimizing for is different. I would argue that we have carved out a little niche market position for ourselves. We have a brand. There's a client base. There's an articulated set of services. And so the optimization now is we're looking to grow the business to provide more value to more companies in our little corner of the world, because we feel very passionately about the value unlock that we can help shepherd agribusinesses through. But the threats are different too. And this is where, the reason I tell this story, this is where narrowly looking at optimization or narrowly looking at optimizing the existing machine can miss a lot of important questions. As I look back, I think the primary threat to the survival of this business in those early days was execution risk. And I'm defining that as, could I and the others that I engage with really pull this off? Could the business plan be translated into results? Would those results for us exceed the cost and effort of creating them? Meaning, could we provide the work and generate revenue in excess of our costs? But at the same time, from a customer perspective, would our products and services, would they create value to clients that were in excess of the fees that we charge? Meaning, was there value creation for all parties? And so now here we are 4 years later, there's systems and processes in place. We've captured the ground that I mentioned earlier. And so while execution is always critical and it'll always be a backbone of how we deliver value, I'm not really sure that at this moment in time, it's the primary risk. So thinking out loud for a moment, I wonder if the risk to this business isn't perhaps a lack of imagination. And for many, as I reflect on where I'm at and people I talk to, for many of us, it's default thinking to equate growth with doing more of what you're already doing. And many times that is actually the right answer, right? Grow the market, grow your client base, grow the impact of your solutions, extend it to new markets, whatever that might be. But I'm not immediately convinced that that's the default answer is the right answer. Maybe the growth that we need in our little business here is to be optimizing for a new service to provide to our existing clients. Maybe it's modifying an aspect of what we do for new clients. Maybe it's moving down the value chain to work with a new segment that has a need that we can meet, but we've never worked with them before. Maybe a lack of imagination is the biggest risk to the business, because if we just do more of what we've proven we can do, we might miss that clients have needs that are bigger, that are more impactful, that are more profitable for all parties, things that we're well positioned to do, but we're not thinking about it because we're just thinking myopically and narrowly in front of us. Here's the machine we have. How do we get more through this machine? I don't lose sleep worrying about our ability to meet a familiar need that we've solved before. But I do sometimes wonder if we're thinking creatively enough about where the needs of food and agribusinesses are headed and how we can be a partner in meeting them. So you get the idea. What was execution risk in the past is perhaps now imagination risk, or a variety of other things that are out there. That's just one that I've really been chewing on here recently. The opportunities and focus areas that we have now are not the same as they were when we got started several years back. The risks are different too. And that is true for your business, whether you've been in business 4 years, 14 years, 40 years, or 100 years. And just like the opportunities are different, the risks are different, the clarity and alignment and focus around what you're optimizing for today is a driver of growth. But it's also important to get crisp on what those threats are that you're facing to success today. We should never fall into that trap of believing that risk exposure is static or unchanging. That's a great way to find out with catastrophic consequences that it never actually is static. So I encourage all of you to please consider this as you look at your own business and think about where you're directing your attention, your energy, and your focus. As we close out for today, if you walk away with nothing else, I hope you will carry this with you. The first is answering what are we optimizing for is such a popular and important question because it's an important question. It produces, again, 3 things: clarity, alignment, and focus. And those things help you accomplish your objectives. But while it's incredibly important, answering what are the threats, what are the risks, what are the negative externalities that could torpedo us, that's equally important because it's going to help you identify and mitigate risk exposure and blind spots that you may have that you don't currently focus on, or that you will miss if you narrowly focus on optimization. And finally, neither of these are fixed conditions. Neither of these are fixed conclusions. What you're optimizing for is going to change and evolve, just like the risks and threats you're exposed to change and evolve. And so asking them, critically looking at them is not an episodic exercise. Revisit them often, and it'll serve you well. I want to say thank you as always for tuning in today. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the Pacesetter Pod on your platform of choice. You can do it right now. And if you want to support the show, please consider leaving us a review. You can do it on your device. It's the best way for you to support the show, for us to get the word out, helps us improve the quality of the content, and make sure that other folks that would benefit from this are having it in front of them. And if you'd like to continue the conversation, you can always connect with me, Joe Mosier, on LinkedIn, or set up a call directly by visiting Mosier Consulting Group online at mosiercg.com. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks again for your time. Execute well and prosper.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.